This is Rachel Ruth Tate, the Astrology Roadshow, and the astrology of January 14th. So I like our aspects today. That full moon was an intense ride, y'all, and today the energy is a bit lifted because we have the moon entering Leo. And in the beginning, right, so the moon entered Leo at about 3 a.m. and we're still feeling the reverberations of that full moon. And as soon as the moon entered Leo, it, around that 3 a.m. time frame, between 3 and 5, is forming an opposition with Pluto in Aquarius. So there is some intensity in the morning. Maybe there are some fears or some apprehensions or some powerful topics, specifically around personal identity or around conversation, connection, that pop up. Again, not all bad, but potentially just, intense. And the moon is only making one more aspect today, and that is a sextile with Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. So as soon as the moon clears that opposition with Pluto, we have access to some positivity, to some hope, and to some really wonderful conversations and social situations, I would say, gatherings, etc. Because we have one more perfected aspect today, and that is Venus in Pisces, where she is exalted, her favorite sign, is making a square with that same Jupiter retrograde in Gemini. Now, Jupiter does not love Gemini, but having Venus square Jupiter, squares are typically charged, dynamic, even tense. They force action. They're 90-degree angles of the nature of Mars. But when they're between Venus and Jupiter, both benefics, right? So if there's some charge between higher good and personal good, it can end up feeling a lot nicer than almost any other square. So maybe there is like this exhale, this come down from that intensity of the full moon. The moon is waning, but it's still pretty big, still pretty full. And there is a little bit of this wonder-awe energy that's going on, especially with Venus in Pisces and then Jupiter in Gemini, right? You can see in the night sky, if you haven't looked out, all the planets, right, which are there in, a limited number of signs. We've got a lot going on between Pisces, Aries, and then Gemini and Cancer, right? So there's like a quarter of the sky. And at night, you can see all the planets lined up, which is really fun, really interesting. You've got Mars hanging out right there by this giant moon. It's a really beautiful thing. So kind of this childlike wonderment vibe going on. But with Venus exalted, and she's in the superior position, overcoming that Jupiter retrograde in Gemini, there is a lot that we can do to feel good, feel better. And just to use a personal example, my full moon was kind of exhausting. And all of these full moon issues, right? Go ahead and listen to the Astrology Table podcast. We just put out like an hour-long episode about the moon, but the moon was dealing with issues of home and family. Nobody I talked to yesterday was like, work fucked me up. No, it was all about like, oh my God, my family members triggered me, or like this issue with my house. And nothing professional. A whole lot more domestic, but we can have access to some sort of healing or some sort of positive, Easter egg in that space. Like my husband and I had a difficult night before the full moon, and like I've told you guys, we are trying for children, but we've decided that, and so I'm dry, totally dry. It's something I've never really done. But I was thinking, the first day of my own cycle, like, why do I have to stay dry? I don't actually have an addiction problem with alcohol, and I really do love and enjoy it. And so my husband had this really sweet idea to get me a bottle of my favorite Armagnac. Yes, I'm a brandy girl. And he got me this bottle from 1988, this like gorgeous, beautiful Armagnac that is older than me. And he's like, listen, if you get your period, you can enjoy this wonderful Armagnac. And if you don't, then we have a child, then it's just this, it created this really beautiful, positive moment for me. I felt so seen, felt so thought of, even though we had like a really sleepless night before. funny enough, we woke up in the middle of the night, same time, this past night after the full moon. And y'all, if you're waking up in the middle of the night, the moon's like staring at us here in the northern hemisphere. It's like shining through my window like a sun. But anyway, we woke up at the same time, but I chose Mars retrograde to take a new approach and to be, I was like, how would, if I was somebody's mother and they were having trouble sleeping, how would I act? And so I was very comforting and very sweet to my husband, who had just had, I think, some tough dreams. Mars trine Neptune, right? There are some dreams going on. And it totally changed the tone. We went peacefully back to sleep and slept up until our alarm, and we were rested this morning. So it's kind of one of those like learning lessons, Venus squared Jupiter, and taking the high road and not the low road. So happy Tuesday.